The palace doors did not slam. They didn't need to, because what happened next was louder than any shout. It was supposed to be routine, quiet, controlled. Just another council meeting behind heavy wooden doors where cameras are never allowed and secrets stay buried. But today, something shifted. Andrew's longtime advisor arrived early, confident, composed. He walked across the courtyard like a man who belonged there, because until now, he did. Staff nodded politely. Security stepped aside. Everything looked normal. Until it wasn't. Just outside the private council chamber, he was stopped. Not gently, not casually. Stopped. A palace official stepped forward. Calm voice. Cold delivery. "You are not authorized to attend today's session." And just like that, the air changed. No shouting, no public scene. But the silence that followed? Heavy, thick, uncomfortable. The advisor blinked, asked for clarification, mentioned past meetings, mentioned protocol. But the answer did not change. He was not getting in. And then the real shock spread through the corridor. The instruction came directly from Prince Edward. Not from an assistant, not from staff, from Edward. That detail moved through the palace like electricity. Because this wasn't a scheduling error, it wasn't confusion, it was a decision. Deliberate. Final. Think about what that means. Council meetings are not symbolic. They are strategic. They shape direction, influence, future plans. Who sits at that table matters, and who is denied entry. That matters even more. Blocking an advisor is not just blocking a person. It is blocking influence, blocking access, blocking power. Andrew's advisor had long been considered one of his closest strategic voices. A protector, a gatekeeper, someone who helped manage damage and shape responses during difficult times. And now, he couldn't even cross the doorway. Witnesses say the advisor tried to stay composed. But his expression changed. Slightly. Enough for those watching to understand. This was not temporary. This was a message. He stepped back, turned around, walked out of the palace grounds without another word. No cameras captured it. But everyone inside felt it. Inside the chamber, the meeting began on schedule. Prince Edward took his seat. Calm, measured, controlled. As if nothing unusual had happened. But everyone in that room knew something had shifted. Because when access is removed, influence weakens. And when influence weakens, power moves. This was not loud. It didn't need to be. Sometimes the strongest royal statements are made in silence, and today, that silence was deafening. If this shocked you, hit subscribe and stay till the end, because this was only the first move. This was not an accident. It was not confusion. And it was definitely not random. So the question now is simple. Was this strategy, or was it a warning? Because Prince Edward does not act impulsively. He is known for being steady, careful, measured, the quiet royal, the one who avoids drama, which makes this move even more powerful. When he personally removed Andrew's advisor from the council list, he knew exactly what it would signal. Access denied, voice removed, influence limited. That is not small. That is structural. Royal meetings are about power, real power, the kind that shapes decisions before the public ever hears a word. And Andrew's advisor has long been seen as his closest strategist, the man who helped protect his image, the man who advised him when headlines turned harsh, the man who stayed loyal when others stepped away. Now that man was outside the door. Think about that image, the advisor standing in the hallway, the meeting happening without him, the future being discussed, without Andrew's voice inside the room. That feels deliberate. Some insiders say Edward was protecting the institution. They argue the monarchy cannot afford more risk, more controversy, more internal pressure, but others are whispering something else. This was a boundary, a line in the sand. Over the past few years, Andrew's position has grown smaller, public appearances reduced, roles adjusted, visibility controlled. But behind closed doors, our influence can survive, unless someone cuts it off. And that is what this looked like. Cut off. Because blocking an advisor does not just stop attendance, it sends a message back to Andrew himself. You are not steering this conversation anymore, and in royal politics, that message carries weight, heavy weight. Sources close to Andrew say frustration is building, not loud anger, not public outrage. Something colder, something quieter, a sense of being pushed further out. And here is what makes this even more interesting. Edward did not explain the decision publicly. No statement, no justification, just action, which makes it stronger. When power moves without explanation, it feels intentional, controlled, final. Was Edward protecting the monarchy, or was he reshaping it? Because this moment feels bigger than one meeting. It feels like repositioning. It feels like control shifting hands. And if that is true, then what happens next could be even more dramatic. If this shocks you, hit subscribe and stay till the end, because the reaction from Andrew's camp is where things start to heat up. This did not start today. It did not start at the doorway. And it definitely did not start with one blocked name on a list. This has been building, slowly, quietly, behind closed doors. For weeks, tension inside palace circles has been growing. Not dramatic shouting, not public fights, but something more dangerous. Disagreement, strategy clashes, private conversations that ended without resolution. Sources say there were signs, subtle ones, meetings where Andrew's ideas were politely acknowledged, then quietly set aside. Conversations where his advisor pushed strongly and was met with silence. Long pauses, changed topics, controlled smiles. And now, we see the result. Because when small tensions go unresolved in royal spaces, they do not disappear. They harden. They turn into lines, and someone eventually draws one. Our insiders suggest there had been increasing discomfort around how Andrew's camp was positioning itself. Efforts to remain relevant, efforts to regain footing, efforts to influence decisions quietly from within. Some saw it as persistence, others saw it as pressure. And Edward? He was watching. Remember, he is not known for loud reactions. He observes, he waits, he moves carefully, which means if he acted now, something must have reached a limit. There are whispers that recent private discussions grew tense, that certain proposals were not well received, that trust, once assumed, began to thin. No explosions, just friction. And friction, over time, creates heat. Imagine being in that environment. Polite conversations layered over unresolved disagreements, formal meetings hiding real frustration, everyone smiling, no one fully aligned. That kind of tension does not stay hidden forever. Eventually, it shows itself in action. And that action was simple. Remove the advisor. It may look procedural on the surface, but beneath it, it feels personal. Because Andrew's advisor was not just attending meetings, he represented Andrew's continued presence inside the system. Blocking him was symbolic. It said the quiet pushback had reached a point. And here is where it gets even more intense. Some insiders believe Edward had support, that this was not a solo move, that others in the palace quietly agreed that boundaries needed to be reinforced. If that is true, then this was not just tension. It was alignment against influence. And that changes the power dynamic completely. Because when quiet concern becomes quiet unity, shifts happen. Fast. Andrew may not have expected this level of resistance, and now he cannot ignore it. The hallway moment was brief, but what it represents, that has been months in the making. If this shocks you, hit subscribe and stay till the end, because the reaction behind Andrew's closed doors might be even more revealing. When the advisor walked out of the palace, he did not go home quietly. He went straight back to Andrew. And what happened behind those closed doors? That is where the real storm began. Sources say the reaction was immediate. Not explosive shouting, not public fury, but something sharper, controlled anger. Because for Andrew, this was not just about one meeting. It was about respect, about position, about how far he has been pushed. Imagine being told your closest ally, your strategic voice, was stopped at the door. Not by accident, not by protocol confusion, but by your own brother. That hits differently. Insiders describe the atmosphere inside Andrew's circle as tense. Conversations were short, voices were low, phones were picked up, messages were sent, questions started flying. Who authorized it? Why now? Is this temporary or permanent? And one question lingered longer than the rest. Is Edward sending a warning? Because in royal life, exclusion is rarely random. Andrew has already faced years of distance from the institution, public roles reduced, appearances limited, support carefully measured. But this feels more direct. Blocking an advisor means limiting strategy, limiting influence, limiting leverage. Sources close to Andrew suggest he felt blindsided. Not necessarily shocked, but surprised by the boldness of the move. Edward has always been measured, reserved. But this was firm, and firmness changes perception. There is also talk that Andrew's team is now reassessing its approach, deciding whether to push back quietly or accept the new boundaries being drawn. Because pushing back publicly could create headlines. And headlines are the last thing anyone inside wants right now. So instead, tension sits, heavy, unspoken, but very real. The advisor reportedly described the encounter in detail, the tone, the wording, the finality, and one detail stood out. There was no room for negotiation. That is what makes this powerful. If Edward had left space for discussion, it would feel procedural, but this felt closed, decided, done. And now Andrew faces a reality that is difficult to ignore. Access is shrinking. Influence is narrowing, and someone else is steering the direction of internal power. The question is not whether Andrew noticed. The question is how he responds. Because in royal history, moments like this are turning points, not loud turning points, quiet ones. And quiet shifts often change everything. If this shocks you, hit subscribe and stay till the end. Because Edward's next move inside that council meeting may have revealed even more. For years, Prince Edward was seen as the steady one, the quiet one, the royal who stayed out of storms. But today, he stepped forward, and everyone noticed. Because blocking Andrew's advisor was not passive, it was leadership, it was control, it was a statement. Inside the council chamber, those present say Edward's demeanor did not change. He was calm, focused, professional, papers aligned, agenda followed. But something was different. There was authority in the room, a subtle shift. When someone who rarely asserts dominance suddenly draws a firm boundary, people pay attention. Edward did not raise his voice. He did not justify himself. He simply proceeded. And that may be the strongest move of all. Royal power is not about loud declarations. It is about quiet control. And this moment felt like control being consolidated. Sources suggest Edward has been taking a more active role behind the scenes, reviewing structures, reassessing influence, protecting what he believes must remain stable. If that is true, then today was not emotional. It was strategic. Think about the message this sends internally. The council operates under discipline, under order, under hierarchy. And Edward just reinforced that hierarchy. Not with speeches, with action. Some insiders describe this as a turning point in perception. The prince once viewed as reserved is now being seen as decisive, firm, even unyielding. And that changes dynamics. Because once someone demonstrates they are willing to enforce boundaries, others adjust quickly. Was this about protecting the monarchy's image? Very likely. Was it about distancing the institution from lingering controversy? Possibly. But it may also be about something bigger. Succession of influence, reshaping internal balance, ensuring that the future direction of the palace is not influenced by the past. That is powerful, and it does not go unnoticed. Observers say there was no visible tension in the meeting after the incident. But beneath the surface? Awareness. Everyone understood that a line had been drawn. Edward did not need to say, "This ends here." His action said it for him. And when quiet royals begin making bold moves, it often signals deeper change. Because this was not reaction. It felt prepared, and preparation suggests intention. The question now is simple. If Edward is stepping into firmer authority, what happens to Andrew's remaining influence? If this shocks you, hit subscribe and stay till the end, because what was discussed inside that council room may reveal why this line was drawn today. The doors closed, and whatever was about to be decided would be decided without Andrew's voice in the room. That alone changes everything. Because this was not a casual discussion. This was a high-level palace council session, the kind where long-term direction is shaped, where sensitive matters are reviewed, where influence quietly determines the future. And Andrew's strategist was not there. Sources suggest the meeting's agenda included structural planning, institutional positioning, internal alignment, big topics, heavy topics, the kind of topics that require unified messaging. Now imagine that room. Senior figures seated, documents prepared, tension still lingering from the doorway incident, and at the head of it all, Edward. Observers say he was composed, clear, focused. He guided the discussion carefully. No visible emotion, no distraction. But make no mistake. The absence in that room was noticeable, because when someone who usually attends suddenly disappears, everyone feels it. Some insiders believe this meeting was about reinforcing direction, about clarifying roles, about drawing firm internal boundaries moving forward. If that is true, then excluding Andrew's advisor was not symbolic, it was strategic, because strategy cannot be influenced by voices not aligned with the new direction. And that is where this becomes serious. If key decisions were discussed, decisions about representation, appearances, public messaging, or internal authority, then Andrew's exclusion becomes more than personal. It becomes structural. There are whispers that new protocols were reviewed, that certain roles may be formally limited. That advisory access could be reshaped permanently. Nothing confirmed, but the timing is hard to ignore. You do not block access on the same day major direction is discussed, unless you want that direction unchallenged. Think about that. No pushback, no alternative voice, no resistance from Andrew's camp inside the room. That creates clean decisions that are harder to reverse later. And if that was the goal, then today was executed precisely. When the meeting ended, attendees left quietly. No statements, no visible tension, just routine exits. But routine can hide major shifts, because the most powerful royal changes often happen without headlines. Until later. If this shocks you, hit subscribe and stay till the end, because what the public is starting to notice may be the clearest sign yet that a royal divide is widening. At first, the public saw nothing. No shouting, no official announcement, no dramatic press release. But then, small signs started appearing, and people began to notice. Royal watchers are not blind. They track movements, appearances, invitations, seating positions, who stands next to whom. And lately, the distance has been visible. Andrew's presence at key moments has grown smaller, more controlled, more isolated. Now add this blocked council incident into the picture. Suddenly, it does not look random. It looks coordinated. Because when internal access shrinks and public visibility shrinks at the same time, it signals alignment. Some observers believe this marks a deeper divide inside the family. Not explosive, not loud, but structured. One branch consolidating authority, another being quietly sidelined. The monarchy thrives on unity, on image, on stability. But even the strongest institutions experience fault lines, and right now, this feels like a fault line widening. Think about how carefully royal appearances are managed, how carefully narratives are shaped. Every step is deliberate, so when Andrew's circle loses access internally, while visibility narrows externally, it feels intentional. And the public can sense that. There is no official statement saying, "There is division." But absence speaks, silence speaks. Who gets invited speaks. Who gets excluded speaks even louder. Social media speculation is growing. Commentators are analyzing every gesture, every lineup, every decision, and this council incident has added fuel, because it confirms something people suspected. The internal power structure may be shifting. Not away from the monarchy, but away from certain figures within it. If Edward's move was about protecting long-term stability, then this divide may be calculated. If it was personal, then it may deepen. Either way, the public is watching more closely now, and once public attention sharpens, internal moves become harder to hide. Because royal drama does not need shouting to feel intense. Sometimes all it needs is a closed door. If this shocks you, hit subscribe and stay till the end. Because what this could mean for Andrew's future might be the biggest shift yet. This was not just about one meeting. It was not just about one advisor. It may have been about the future. Because moments like this do not happen in isolation. They happen when institutions decide where they are going, and who is coming with them. Prince Andrew's role has already changed over the years. Public appearances reduced, formal duties adjusted, influence questioned. But this feels like a deeper shift. When access to internal strategy is limited, long-term influence fades. And when influence fades, so does relevance. That is the part no one says out loud. If Edward's move was about strengthening structure, then Andrew may be entering a new phase, a quieter one, a smaller one. Some insiders believe this signals formal distancing behind the scenes, not dramatic exile, not public confrontation, just a slow narrowing of access. Fewer seats at the table, fewer strategic voices allowed inside. And that matters. Because in royal systems, proximity equals power. The closer you are to decision-making rooms, the stronger your position. And today, Andrew's circle was one step further away. The bigger question now is whether this was the final boundary, or just the first. Will Andrew accept the shift? Will his team adapt? Or will this quiet divide widen further? History shows us that royal power rarely disappears overnight. It changes gradually, carefully, until one day the structure looks different, and no one can pinpoint the exact moment it changed. This council meeting might be that moment. Not loud, not explosive, but decisive. Prince Edward did not make a speech, he did not explain himself publicly, and he did not need to. The action spoke, and the message was clear. Access can be removed, influence can be limited, and the direction of the monarchy will be protected, even if it means drawing firm lines within the family. The palace doors closed quietly. But what they signaled, that may echo much louder in the months ahead.